is going to be a little bit of a different one. I am very clearly at work, but we want to explain a bit of an impromptu adventure I got ourselves into on the boat. So bear with me, it's going to have to be between tasks because, like I said, I'm at work. First part to start was we went to head out to the river house and everything was going good. We had our son, my mom, the dog, the cat, ourselves obviously, and made it to the house. Everything was good, and we just wanted to go up to the creek that was a couple miles up above the house. So we load the kid, my mom, the dog, ourselves back into the boat, leave the cat because she's just not a fan of the boat, and we go to head up to the creek. And it was low water, but I'm relatively confident reading the water, relatively being the operative word. And yeah, it got a little bit western. So we're pretty much right across the river, which is really braided in that section. Right across the river from the creek we want to get to, the mouth of the creek. And I see it starting to get a little bit skinny. I start seeing some ripples and going way too fast. And had to make a split-second decision. Hold that thought, I gotta do a couple things. That split-second decision that I made ended up being the wrong one. The water was way skinnier than I expected it to be, and I tried to hard corner to the right to try to skim over this last little bit of water before it completely disappeared into a sandbar. And so I throttled into my turn and cut hard right and just nailed that sandbar. Sliding stop, just completely center of the sandbar. My mom and our kids slid off the I feel so bad laughing. It's funny now, it wasn't funny then. They both slid off the back seats. I immediately cut power so we're not stuck with a bunch of gravel, and then I knew we were stuck really bad. Also important to note that my wife was on the bow because she was trying to keep an eye out for any shallow water, so being a little bit more forward on the boat as my eyes. And I hollered at her, I was like, hang on, because I had to power into it, and thank God she didn't fly off the boat. Again, it's not funny. I don't know why I'm laughing. I guess it's a little bit funny now just how absurd the situation was. But anyway, I ground ourselves, and after confirming everybody's okay, no equipment damage, no people damage, we all try to get to digging. So it was bad. We were in probably 3 inches of water to begin with, and we were just trying to dig out the gravel from around the boat to try to get it to have some movement to work us back out into the channel, because the sandbar was right in the middle of the channel. So we started in some water, and fat water was on the other side. So I felt like if we could just wiggle it enough and get at least the bow into the current, it would help us, rinse ourselves out into the current, basically. And so, and mind you, this boat is not small. This is not a little John boat. It is a 21-foot CR Predator with a 200 horse inboard jet. So this thing it's a workhorse. It's very hefty, but that doesn't help in this situation when it's very heavy and impossible to move. So we try for the entire day. And it gets towards the end of the day when I'm realizing we're not going to get out that day. So we make a plan just to overnight in the boat. Thankfully, we had a bunch of snacks. We had a couple tarps. Thank God, though, that the boat has an enclosed cabin. So while it's not warm, it is dry. And that was at least a blessing. So we hunker down on the aluminum floor of the boat and try our best to get some rest. Just very frustrating situation. And I felt so terrible that what was supposed to be a very quick and easy fishing trip turned into, all of a sudden, at least an overnight boat camping, impromptu boat camping. After realizing that we were not going to get out and staying our first night in the boat, I decided the following day, after more pointless digging, to try and walk across the deepest part of the river to another sandbar that had a giant log on it, and I was going to try to tie off to it and winch us out. I put the waders on, had a massive length of rope over my shoulder, and I'm wading out, and this is a fast current, and I start losing my footing. I'm just about to swamp my waders, and my wife and my mom are watching from the boat, and they're petrified. I come to learn it was probably not the easiest thing to watch, because this is glacial water. This is not the Bahamas. This is Alaskan swift wild waters. If I got swept away, that very well could be, especially without being able to go home and warm up, could have been a dire situation. So I felt little splashes coming up into my waders, and my footing was starting to get looser and looser, so I just started bobbing to keep my footing and backing myself back towards the shore that I came from. And that obviously the plan didn't work out how I was hoping. So regroup, and I decide to try to walk back towards our house, because between our place and the creek, there's a guy who has property. He's just a weekender. He comes out from town and spends time at his property and then goes back. But I had seen his boat, so I knew he was home, at his river property. And so I figured, well, he could probably tow us out. So regroup and start the walk several miles through dense Alaskan bush, bear territory, back to see if I can't get his attention. So unfortunately, I walk all that way, and I get directly across from his place, and he's not there. His boat's gone, and I realized it was Sunday, which meant he went back to town. So I walked all that way for no reason, and I was very discouraged. But I just turned back around, went back to the boat, informed everybody of what had happened and why I was back without him and his boat. And I decided that I was going to have to go with the longer option that I was trying to avoid, because it was a much farther walk, but walking upriver to our neighbor Sarah's house. She lives there full time, year round, and so I knew that she would be home. And that was our only other chance to get help, because our property is about 100 miles upriver from the landing. So it's very wild country back there. Not many people travel up there in boats. Not many planes go overhead. So there's very limited opportunities for anybody to know that we were out there and stuck. Because we had let people know that we were going out to the house. Every time we go, we let somebody know. But that doesn't do us any good when it's people that don't have a boat, and people that are also not able to be informed that we have gotten stuck because we had no means of emergency communication. So I got back and decided that very first thing in the morning, I was going to make the really long walk through the very dense woods to Sarah's house. It sounds like over the river and through the woods to Grandma's house we go, but it was not really that nice of a stroll, I don't think. It was challenging. It's a very deep bush back there, and it was not easy. So we spend night number 2 on the boat, and into day 3 is when I decided to go walk upriver to our friend Sarah's house. She lives there full time, so I knew she'd be home, but it was just much farther, and I was trying to avoid having to go that far. So in the morning of day 3, I make the walk to Sarah's, and I get there, and I have a whistle and a bunch of survey tape, red, bright orange survey tape, and I tie it to a stick mind you, I'm across the river from her, so it's quite far, and I can't cross the river, so I'm just hoping that I can get her attention, and blowing the whistle, calling her name. I had tied the survey tape around the stick, and I'm waving it around, and she finally hears me, and she kayaks over to the other side of the river where I am. She was like, "What happened?" And I explained the situation, and she goes back to her cabin, and I wait, and then before I know it, here comes a helicopter. So that helicopter lands, and it's the Alaska State Troopers, and I explain the situation to them, and they take me back to our boat. They're able to land on the gravel bar because of how shallow it was. They pick up my family and leave me and the dog at the boat so they can take them back to the house first. They come back for me and the dog. We get flown to the house, and then they help us get coordinated with some people we know so that they could come with their boat and help us get pushed out back into the current. And because we didn't have cell service, so they help us get coordinated, and luckily we're safe and sound at the house. But you know, the people we know come up and they help us get the boat pushed out, and everything was fine, no damage. But it really just showed me what we were lacking in terms of gear and equipment for self-recovery, and now we were much more equipped. We also bought an inReach, which was probably the biggest mistake that I made before this trip, was not having a means of emergency communication, and that'll be a mistake I never make again. And we also always keep a life straw on the boat now, because we didn't have any clean water, because we only had we were only going to go up for an hour. We were supposed to fill up our water at the creek because it's clear water, so it's good to drink, but we never made it that far. So we were having to drink from the river, and it's silty, so we're trying to avoid drinking it as much as possible. And just mistakes that I made that could have been very much worse had we not been so close to our neighbor's house, and had she not been there for some reason. Just all these scenarios that I refuse to ever let happen to us again. So we're much more prepared now. I've learned a lot from that trip, but I want to also mention how appreciative I am for neighbors that care about each other, and for the Alaska State Troopers. You know, people, they dog on law enforcement, and I'm not going to get into all that, but I have never had anything bad to say about them. They are there when we need them. They were more than happy to help. They were kind to us, very, very just overly accommodating, and wanting to do whatever they could to give us a hand, and just really good people. Truly, truly good people. And our neighbor Sarah, we're forever thankful to have friends like her and her husband Dave. You know, they're good people. So it was a really scary situation that could have been a lot worse, but thankfully God was watching out for us, and we kept our cool, and everything ended up being fine. So I'm just never looking to repeat that adventure ever again.